Hello YouTubers, welcome to Big Buddha is Watching. I'm Big Buddha and I'm not lying, I'm not sat outside my house. This is genuinely the cinema car park. Look, there's the Odeon over there. So I am genuinely sitting in the car park now, having just 2 minutes ago got out of seeing Blade Runner 2049. As I said in my previous video, I reviewed the film yesterday. If you watched the previous video, you'd have seen me review it yesterday. And so this is going to be an initial reactions review, no notes taken, so I'm just going to talk about the film, still very fresh in the mind, and give you my thoughts. And so here we go. I think I was pretty much blown away by it, to be honest. It's definitely set in the same world as Blade Runner, the first film. It has a very similar aesthetic, but at the same time, it's also has its own look. It's a slightly more subdued look. The intervening story in the intervening 30 years between the two films is that there's basically been an ecological collapse. So whereas the original was very much a self-contained story within the city limits of Los Angeles, here we go out onto much broader locales. We visit a dilapidated junkyard cityscape that's sort of latched onto Los Angeles, and we also visit Las Vegas at one point, and it's kind of an irradiated city where nobody lives bar one person, and so what you get here is something that not only owes a large debt to one of the sci-fi classics of the 80s, but also owes a debt to a few other films that I can think of, like Mad Max was very much at the forefront of my mind, especially in the Las Vegas sequences. So it gives you get a film here that has a much broader scope to it. It's less, although it looks like the original movie, with a few exceptions where technology has obviously advanced in this society over the years. So there's a prevalence of holograms throughout the film. There's even whole characters in it who are holographic characters. I guess this points to them wanting to make the point that humanity is really dwindling, and this film is really set on the cusp of I guess humans becoming the line between humanity and technology becoming more and more blurred. So it has it's a more mature film, really. It has a less. The first film very much feels like a comic book in many ways, and this film. This is going to happen a lot. I'm balancing the phone on my steering wheel. This is a more mature film, a less comic booky feeling film. It's also an hour longer than roughly than the last film. So plot wise, you're allowed to go. They were allowed to go much more in depth, I think, with the extra running time in some of the themes. It's a very deliberately paced film. It's paced much more like a film of the early 80s, maybe, or even the 70s. It's which I appreciated, because there's a less sort of cynical feel to than there is in a lot of science fiction blockbusters. In that you're allowed time to engage with each and every scene, and you're allowed time to really engage with what the point of each scene is. And yeah, so I very much yeah, I'm still sort of kind of buzzing from it, really. Denis Villeneuve, who directed, it's not Ridley Scott this time around, he only produced the film, but Denis Villeneuve was absolutely the perfect choice to make this, because on the one hand he captures tonally the feel of the first film, and he as I say, he's made something that feels of the same world as the first film. And at the same time, he's made something that very much feels his own and very much feels like a film from 2007. So it's a real neat balancing trick that he's managed to sort of please everyone in the direction. Art design wise, I mean, the original film looks very scientific, very sci-fi throughout, whereas this feels more akin to films we've sort of seen, science fiction films, at least futuristic science fiction films that we've seen post Minority Report, which have much more blurred the contemporary with the scientific. I guess that's become more prevalent because we are we're in the 21st century now and way into it. We're living in the future now. I mean, we're only 2 years off the timelines that the original film was set in. So, I mean, I guess technically, this is no longer the future. This is almost an alternative reality to now. But I find a great choice of director, and a great look for the film. Roger Deakins was absolutely the best choice to shoot this. Again, the film looks beautiful, but looks beautiful in its own way. It has its own look. It's not the comic booky look of the first film. It had a great screenplay by, as I said in the last video, it's Hampton Fancher and Michael Green, not David Peebles this time around. For what I understand, like, Michael Green's an absolute, sort of a rising. Well, he's had a good run this year because he was also responsible for the screenplay for Logan, which I haven't seen, but that was another film that got really good reviews for being a smart adult take on a science fiction franchise. So that really worked well, and sad they didn't get Vangelis back, but I mean, Vangelis really doesn't work that much these days, I don't think, and I think that the scores he pretty much produced after Chariots of Fire and the original Blade Runner score, which are really his masterpieces. Hans Zimmer and Benjamin Wallfisch, I believe is the composer. Benjamin Wallfisch has scored all of Denis Villeneuve's films to date, or at least the last 3, I think. They do a fine job of sort of emulating Vangelis' score, and obviously Vangelis' original themes are interwoven into their score throughout, especially at the end. So that was fun. I knew actually watching Dunkirk that at least the score was in safe hands, because I can remember towards the end of Dunkirk there were a few sort of Vangelis-esque scores. I think Hans Zimmer was obviously gearing up for doing Blade Runner when he was doing Dunkirk, because I could see slight nods. He was obviously itching to get going on a Vangelis-esque score. Hans Zimmer, I've really come to admire, because I think he's taken the musical score in new directions in recent years. It's less music to evoke emotions and more a sound design that he does, a soundscape, if you like, that he creates, with his punishing, where you hear him in the cinema, they're almost ear-bleeding scenes. Great cast, I thought. Ryan Gosling, fairly solid. This is Ryan Gosling's movie. He gets top billing in the end credits. Harrison Ford is a supporting player. Harrison Ford only, I'd say, appears in probably the last half hour of this film, and I was slightly worried when he turned up that it would not play into the role. It would just seem like a gratuitous cameo that was sort of crowbarred in to appease the fans. Thankfully, that wasn't the case. Harrison Ford's role very much plays into the story. But Ryan Gosling is very solid. He's like Anthony Hopkins. He's a very still performer, but his performance is always in his eyes. If you watch Drive, he's almost placid throughout, and there's everything that's going on is going on with the eyes or behind the eyes. He very much carries the movie, the film. I mean, the story. I won't get into spoilers, but it's interestingly though well, here's the thing. I was actually I do a bit of writing myself on the side, and as a fan of Blade Runner, I've had a go at actually writing not a sequel, but what I would have liked to have seen story-wise in a sequel to Blade Runner. And this isn't a spoiler at all, because Deckard is still, his nature is still left ambiguous in the film, thankfully. They explain it away by in the first scene where Dave Bautista appears as a replicant, and he states that he's been living on this farm, hiding out since 2020. So it's established, or sort of retconned, if you like, that there were maybe replicants that weren't adherent to the 4-year lifespan. So it's perfectly possible that that Deckard still could be a replicant, if that's the way you want to believe it. If not, the story still works if he's a human. And interesting enough, that fact makes the story more interesting and more ambiguous, because you don't know if he's a human or a replicant, because that also bleeds into the storyline and the nature of other characters. What does it mean for the future of humanity if Deckard is or is not a replicant? Solid work from Gosling and Ford. All the rest of the cast. The names in this were little much more than glorified cameos, really. Jared Leto, I guess you could say he was the villain, but he's not a nice character, put it that way. But not really the central villain, or at least not the one that needs to be defeated in the final climax of the film. But but he's in the film very little, but his scenes were really good. Dave Bautista, criminally underused. He's really only in the first scene, but there are some. They have released 3 sort of short films which you can find on YouTube that kind of lead into this. I think they're called Blade Runner 2036, 2022, and I forget the years, but we'll look out for them because they were good, and they as well, assured me that this film was in safe hands, because watching them, I felt okay. Yes, that's where I got the first indication that at least tonally they've managed to recapture the world of Blade Runner. Notes, no notes. What else was I going to say? Yeah, there was something else I was going to say then that I did want to point out. It is a long film. It is, 2 hours 45 minutes, but whereas a lot of films just these days are long, and they're sort of made that length for the sake of it. Here I felt it was justified. I was happy to immerse myself in this world and immerse myself in this story for that length of time, and watching the story as a whole, it really paid off for me. By the conclusion of the film, it felt a satisfying whole, and well, there you go. There's just some initial thoughts for you on the film. I am struggling to think of criticisms at the moment. It won't be to all tastes. What I said in the video yesterday was wrong. I was led to believe that this film was doing a lot better at the box office than maybe it was, just because I read the headline to an article saying that this film is going to make more money than the original film in one weekend than the original film did altogether in its original run. And I read that as it being a big hit. So far in a week, it's made half its budget back. So it's very possible that they're only going to have a minor hit on their hands, or maybe even just break even, sadly. But then, as I said, this was going to be a hard sell to mainstream audiences. This is a very thoughtful film, and it's a thoughtful film, sort of masquerading as a blockbuster. But it's a very rich and engrossing experience, and something I will rewatch again, and who knows, maybe do a proper review on it one day once I've had time to digest it. I think it's going to have a rewatchability factor, just because the story and the themes are so dense and complex and all encompassing that I will see it again and maybe do a proper review on it one day. Oh yeah, that was the thing. Yeah, the one bad review I've read of this so far said there were no iconic moments in the film. And I just thought, well, how can you judge that? Surely time makes an iconic moment. You don't know what from this film is going to be taken by popular culture and emulated, and what's going to inform. You don't know what in this is going to be the iconic moments. You don't know if certainly the dialogue is, I think, just as crisp as it was in the original. So maybe there'll be a speech that rivals the Tannhauser Gate speech from the original. Who knows? There's I can't really think of anything that was on the nose as that. But in a way, we live in more subtle times. Well, at least when it comes to cinema, than we did in the 1980s. Films aren't as on the nose now. So this, Blade Runner 2049 feels like a film of 2017. And That's all I'm going to say for now. So there you go, my initial thoughts on Blade Runner 2049. Join me next time, folks. I'm going to sign off now. I'm sure I'm going to think of lots more that I should have said in this video on the way home. But until next time, folks, this is me, Big Buddha, signing off, and I shall see everyone out there in YouTube land. And unlike in my Wonder Woman review, I'm going to not try and drop the phone when I do this time. See you, folks.